Okay, um, good afternoon and good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to Tekedia Open. Please just confirm that my voice is audible and that you can actually hear me very well. Please just help me confirm that. You could just, okay, great.
Loud and clear.
Okay.
Yes,
so
I can hear you.
Okay, let's just give about 2 minutes, then we get started. Just 2 minutes, please. Then we get started. Thank you so much. Yeah, just in a minute, please. I will get started. Just in a minute. Okay, I think we can now get started. And as just noted, welcome to Tequila Capital Open. My name is Ndubisi Ekekwe. We'll be having basically a conversation today titled The Wealth and Technology of Nations. And for us to get it started, let me begin by sharing my slide. Okay, please, if it's possible, could you just help me confirm that you can see this slide, please? And I hope it's coming out fine. It's not coming.
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah, it's actually need to project it. So what is the problem today?
Go into the camera mode down at the bottom.
Yeah, this is what we do here every day. I don't know what is wrong with you. There is just something new they added here. Just a minute. Okay, great. Okay, great. So I have it. Okay, so we're going to be discussing the wealth and the tech of nations. It's going to be a little bit of Adam Smith, Pythagoras, and the typical things young people do in Lagos, Nairobi, and other many major capitals around the world. And to get into that, I will begin by just sharing this map of the world. And if you look at this map of the world, there's so many things that you can actually extrapolate from here. It's a world of frictions, and it's also a world of opportunities. So many challenges, lack of clean water, good, decent education across communities. There are also insecurity issues. Just any part of the world, there is something that you can actually point out that may be very wrong. Even this climate change paralysis that we are experiencing across communities, nations, can also include that as part of the components within the world of frictions that we are seeing today. But also within this world, there are also massive level of opportunities. Going to see here that there have been patterns of industries, people who have actually pioneered different things, and they've actually captured massive level of opportunities in the markets. So if you now look at some of those great companies on earth, these are people, these are entities, these are conglomerates that have figured out how to overcome these frictions. And by overcoming those frictions, they have actually been rewarded massively in the market. So want to see, as we move into the wealth of nations and the technology of nations, how are these relationships evolving within the market system? And to do that, let me take you back to one of the finest economists ever lived. There's Adam Smith. If you go back to one of his finest works, The Wealth of Nations. And in The Wealth of Nations, he brought massive level of postulation about the invisible hand, about division of labor, about the pursuit of self-interest, and of course, about the free trade and the free market system. So if you now have that free market system where demand and supply can come into a near equilibrium point without interference from government, what Adam Smith was basically saying that you are going to have the capacity of actually creating wealth in that society, that when an equilibrium point is attained because of artificial perturbations that are coming from government. So in his model, he says, hey, allow demand and supply to roll. Let people, because of self-interest, this is what they call the greedy part of capitalism, which may not necessarily be very bad, because if you are greedy enough, if you have this self-interest enough, you can go into the market and create a better product. And if you create a better product, possibly you are actually going to have customers who are going to patronize you. So he's saying that quest of having profit, that quest of trying to build something better so that you can actually capture more value in the market is a very critical component of building a society that has a lot of wealth in it. So that was Adam Smith. And as Adam Smith was also moving in there, can also take you back to some of the finest moments in the history of philosophy, when the Greek philosophers were having their conversations on what is the nature and what is the composition of the universe. If you go back to what tells Heraclitus, most of them had their own different interpretations of the main components of the universe. They say that the world is made of water. Heraclitus said the world is made of fire. But if you go close here, talk about a man called Pythagoras. Pythagoras said that nothing is nothing, that the world is nothing but numbers, that the universe that we know, that the world that we know is nothing but number, that numbers rule the universe. And what is basically saying that everything we do and everything we participate in the world, that thing is nothing but numbers. Your business of retail, your business of medicine, your pursuit of law, anything that you do in this universe, in this art, he believed that the world and that thing is nothing but numbers. So why are these two things and these two postulations very critical? They are very, very important because there is actually a great convergence in their thought processes on how nations and how, of course, communities and then companies can actually create wealth. The left-hand side here for me said that is the major postulation of Adam Smith. The visible hand, the unseen forces that move the free market system. When the government does not try to create winners in economics, when the government allows competition to freely move, that demand and supply can now attain equilibrium point naturally without a lot of perturbations. So he's saying that our self-interest is what actually makes us better. You have an idea and you go into the market to launch your idea, and somebody later on sees what you've done. The person thinks he or she can do better. That is simply saying, I have a self-interest that the value that you are capturing in that market, that profit margin that you are collecting, I am going to build something that is better than what you have so that that opportunity will come to me. And that person goes into the market. The person creates that product, launches that product, and then the customers begin to move to that individual, saying that there is nothing wrong with that, because our pursuit of self-interest is the centerpiece of entrepreneurial capitalism. And as you look at the right-hand side here, that is a summary of Pythagoras. So I'm trying to connect these two elements together, that for the far freedom of production and consumption, for you to do that effectively and efficiently, you need a direction. And that direction is what Pythagoras called numbers. If you are a farmer and you don't have insights about your customers, if you are a banker, you don't know the numbers that you are working on. If you are a businessman in any field, you don't just have a very clear understanding whom your consumers or customers or competitors are. He's saying that there's just no way you can make progress. Interestingly, if you are also a country and you don't have the capacity to even know your citizens, you don't have the capacity to even understand what their needs are, the challenges they are facing, and where they are, you cannot also make progress. So for that economic development, which Adam Smith was trying to explain in the Word of Nation, Pythagoras is saying that you need numbers to help you bring them towards a great convergence, so that the numbers will drive that prosperity that you are trying to create through the postulations that the economics about the pretend. So doing these two things and bringing them into a concatenated form can actually drive prosperity in nations, can actually drive growth in companies, and can actually accelerate anything that we are trying to do. So in that case, you've looked through 2,000 years of GDP, have seen plotted these plots here to show that the translations of nations that were not growing, that are static, frozen, economic opportunity was just not there over generations, to nations whose GDPs now started accelerating because of so many changes they have done. And if you look at those changes, you can now see that they've actually done a lot of changes in the postulation of the visible hand of Adam Smith and using the Pythagorean numbers that he postulated. And by the time they brought these things together, you see a GDP that was flattened over generations to a GDP that started growing. And you can also say here that in companies, not just now in nations, that even when organizations at different levels in their capacities begin to now drive innovation using numbers to drive how they invest, how they create products, how they go into the markets, the same thing happens. It's not a question of that we are smart. It's not a question that you have brilliant people in that country. It's not a question that you have extremely brilliant people in that particular organization. What is happening here is that besides having extremely talented, brilliant people, there are still important frameworks which must be deployed in an organization for that. In that case, for a company, you are no more talking about GDP here, but are talking about growth. And that growth will be measured in revenue. That growth will also be measured in profit. And if you look back into history, right around here, some of the finest guys who helped us to understand natural philosophy lived. They helped us to make sense of what we call physics today. They helped us to pioneer what we call chemistry today. They helped us to understand the human system and the world of biology. The whole construct of natural philosophy they pioneered. They built compounds, they created compounds. They invented things. They live an inventive society. But when polio came, they died. When tuberculosis came, they died. Because these men and women, they were very, very brilliant people, but they were not innovators. They were inventors. They were not innovators. Invention is an idea, coming up with an idea. They were very good. They helped us to create and discovered all these elements. They pioneered fundamental constructs of physics, and they helped us build the framework to understand natural philosophy through mathematics, the science of numbers. But they could not translate most of those things into products, into services, that when pandemic came, even though they had a compounds, they died. They could not create the vaccines out of those compounds because that translation, they did not make that to happen. So what happened was, across human generations here, people were getting poorer. People that lived here were poorer than people that lived here. People that lived here were poorer than people that lived here because it's simple economics. If the GDP is flat over time, per capita income drops because GDP per capita is talking about the total GDP divided by population. And when you remember that the population was increasing even when the GDP was flat, the implication that the world was becoming hopeless. They look into the future of the world. They say there will just no future because every generation we are getting poorer because more people were being born, the population was increasing, but the economic opportunity was not. I'm trying to get you into how things started changing. And that is now the foundation, the core postulation, the wealth of nations, and led into the emergence of the technology of nations. And I explain this here, that so many great thinkers came. Even Marcus must have remembered him in agricultural science secondary school book or in a biology class. He made his own postulation that said that we're going to run out of food because population was growing in geometric progression, while human ability to create food productivity was actually in arithmetic progression. So you got into, so if population was moving faster than, he said that we're going to run out of food. But gentlemen and ladies, something happened here. I use only America here and China because these are the two dominant economies. But in the big paper, you see other countries actually had this level of translation. Some countries, of course. So a flattened GDP now started going exponentially, parabolic, and of course, over time, China also cut off. Going to United Kingdom, Sweden, and all these other countries. But not every nation in the world has experienced this translation. And that is my big message here today, that there are still countries whose GDPs are flattened over generations and people are getting poorer because the population growth was faster and growing faster than economic opportunity. And when that happens, it means that new generations of people in the future will become poorer than people that lived after them. And those people were poorer than people that came after them. And it becomes a vicious cycle because as population increases and opportunity shrinks and per capita, it means that bad things will happen. Many sub-Saharan African countries, unfortunately, are still here, living in an invention society. And they are confronted today with the challenges that Reverend Martyrs and other thinkers are postulated. People that live in 1980s in Nigeria, the largest states had things better than people that are living today. Because to a large extent, the GDP has not increased that much to compensate for the higher population. So that translation from invention society to innovation economy has not happened. That means the wealth of nations is still latent. But of course, there is a pattern that is taking place. Using the economics magazine covers We can't call Africa a hopeless continent. And just over a period of time, they're using imaging. Of course, we are hoping that the coups that we have experienced recently in West Africa, that those things just have to be cut off to make sure that a part of advancement, opportunity, entrepreneurial capitalism that we are experiencing over the last few decades in Africa, that translation will continue to happen. Because you cannot build companies, you cannot fix market frictions when there is insecurity, when the coups are happening. And that means that creating that enabling environment is a fundamental element to driving that translation. So that translation here is key, moving here to here. And there are so many vistas and patterns that happen. So in our beautiful continent, a lot of things are already happening. And one of the things that we see that is happening is the pursuit of entrepreneurial capitalism. I just get it here to explain here that when you have that friction in the market, that friction needs a solution. You are hungry, you need food. But markets by nature are not perfect. That means demand and supply by nature cannot come into an equilibrium point without another element within the market system. And I'd like to use this example because it's easy to understand. If we assume in the city of Lagos right now that there is no restaurant in any part of Lagos, and Ndubisi comes from the United States where I am right now, and I land in Lagos, and I'm hungry. I don't have a family member in Lagos, and there is no restaurant. I have a friction. That friction is hunger, and I need a solution, food. The problem here is I need now to knock at every door in Lagos looking for somebody who has food, because there's no restaurant, there is no company, there is no business. I'll be very lucky if I knock on the first 2, 3, 4 doors, maybe somebody has food to sell. But at the same time, I am knocking at the door, there is also someone who has food. But he may be at 100 person I will have to knock at. So we say that a market imperfection creates information asymmetry problem. And that asymmetry problem means that demand and supply, they cannot come together because one part knows what the other one doesn't know. And as a result of that, they cannot have transaction to take place. So as I'm knocking, I can't get somebody who has food. Somebody's also waiting for somebody to knock who needs food so that he can sell. But you know there is a simple way to solve that problem. And that simple way to solve that problem is what we call a business. Mama Kemi opens up a restaurant the next day and says, I'm going to solve this problem. There's just no need of waiting for somebody to knock at my door before I will sell on Kwawi, Olikoiko, and Malazobo. What I will do here, I'm going to open up a restaurant. It's Mama Kemi's restaurant. The next time Ndubisi is hungry, I don't have to knock at people's door. What do? I just go to Mama Kemi's restaurant. Mama Kemi restaurant is a business. And she has opened up a vehicle for the pursuit of entrepreneurial capitalism, where when I am served that food, after finishing and eating, I pay her money. And that money I'm paying her is revenue to her business for overcoming that friction of hunger, which I had already suffered. So she solved my frictional problem, and I compensate her for doing that by paying her money, which is revenue. The fact is this: any society, any economy that can create those entities that Mama Kemi has created, that society is going to advance. That society is going to flourish because that society now has a process of building systems that overcome frictions which are in that community. And this one is food. Feeding people who are hungry. It could also be banking services. Assume there is no bank, you have 1 million naira with you in Owerri. You don't have any need for it. You need to lend it to somebody. At 10%, somebody has to return the principal and the interest rate at the end of 12 months. You have to look for that person. And you're also hoping that you get someone who just delivers promise. The problem here is that you may not find somebody who will do and meet all the requirements you want. But at the same time, there is somebody who needs 1 million, who also needs to discover you. Because there is no bank, that transaction may not happen. So what happens? A group of guys say, hey, let's start a bank. It's called ABD Bank. What happens? You take that money to the bank, they pay you that 10%, they now take that money and lend to the other person who needs it for a poultry business. And by doing that, they have overcome a friction for you, and they have improved the economic system by making it possible for demand and supply to attain an equilibrium point at scale, helping to drive, improve the efficiency of the utilization of factors of production towards making the society better. So the wealth of nations are now being largely, to a very great point, centered on those companies. Because those companies are now vehicles to overcoming and helping to solve problems which we know are in abundance. So the more you build those companies, the more you figure out how they can grow, and the more they begin to solve those problems in the society, beautiful things begin to happen. And how can these companies advance? You know what? They have to have capabilities. Capabilities are now things that make them better. Mama Kemi has to know how to cook food. He has to know how to have customer service. The banks must understand how to manage credit. Those are all elements of the market system. In Africa today, we have some companies, because there are legends like Dangote Cement, like MTN, and so many of them. But we also have new species of companies which are emerging. And those new species of companies are emerging. They are actually built to a larger extent on the numbers that Pythagoras postulated. And what I'm trying to say that their impacts will be so huge because they are bringing a better fusion of the numbers according to the Pythagoras postulation. So many of them across the continent, OPay, PalmPay, Wave, MoneyPoint, as you know, just so Southern Pay, Trigger, there's so many. And it's what they call unicorns. These are companies worth at least $1 billion. And mainly tech companies, privately owned, they are all adding up across the continent. And below those unicorns, there are also very huge entities worth $500 million, $200 million. These entities, besides just their numbers, they are the vehicles upon which that market system can actually continue to improve to help in bringing this demand and supply into a better equilibrium point where societies can get better. You know, just imagine 20, 15 years ago, depending on your age, so many young people here, and you have a customer in Kenya, you are in Lagos. He likes your product. He can't pay you. There's just no way he can pay because the banks will not allow to process any transaction less than maybe $100 because the fee the bank will collect is even more than $100. So how are you going to pay somebody for $100 when the fee itself is more than $100? So that was a very massive friction. But now see how, to a large extent, that problem has been taken care of. So that is that component. So the question here is, how do we have the capacity to build those great companies? It comes down to capabilities. And those capabilities are now built on pillars. The pillar of knowledge, having the risk-taking capacity, capital, and labor. The knowledge of a people is the wealth of a people. The knowledge of a nation is the wealth of a nation. And across human history, if you go back even to the old time of the pharaohs, you realize that Egypt was the finest center of the creation of knowledge. In short, that time, nothing could be compared to the wealth of knowledge in Egypt. And Egypt ruled the world. If you go even the time that Joseph was interpreting a dream for Pharaoh in the Bible. You just see that what was just happening there was Egypt was just far ahead of everyone. And Egypt dominated the world of commerce. When Moses appeared before the Israelites, and one of the greatest recommendations he received that he studied under the pharaohs. In other words, he went to the Harvard, the MIT, the best university system in the world, and learned from the best astrologers and thinkers in the house of Pharaoh. And that means that he was qualified in knowledge to lead his people. That was knowledge. If you have knowledge in your organization, you're also going to have the capacity to drive wealth. If you have knowledge in your nation, you're also going to have capacity to drive wealth. The best thing about United States today, United Kingdom, Japan, Canada, and all these great countries, it's not really because they make good bombs. I don't even know that. Or maybe they make cluster. No, it's that they have very fine knowledge creation systems. Their universities are so good that they have the capacity to look at challenges and they can come up with solutions that can help to overcome those challenges. There is never a hopeless moment in the history of a people when you have problems and you don't have the means of going to tackle those problems. That is the challenge of the Sub-Saharan Africa, because we know our problems. But the problem here, we don't just have the knowledge capacity that we have to deploy to solve those problems. And it becomes like those men that lived around 1,500 years ago, who were inventors, pioneers in physics and chemistry. But when polio, tuberculosis came, they died because they could not create vaccine. So we know we don't have electricity in Nigeria, but we don't have the capacity to bring that electricity. But when you now go into a place where people have knowledge, they begin to solve those problems at scale. That entrepreneurial capitalism, looking at having the mindset of taking risk. And that becomes a very key part. Capital, that is a very huge part of the whole system. Because capital helps you to buy things you don't have within the factors of production. I don't have this, I have capital to buy it. And labor, the most critical and the most important, especially in places like Nigeria with Japan, where everyone is leaving the country. Labor is that executor of everything that you want to do. How can you build a semiconductor plant in Nigeria when you can't have students from university that can run it? In short, TSMC, the largest semiconductor manufacturing facility in the world, is a Taiwanese company. The US government gave it billions of dollars to come to the United States to build a manufacturing facility. They advertised for jobs. They couldn't find people that could actually do the job. So they now ask the US government, the requirement for this deal is that we have to build these plants in America. But the problem here, we don't have young people that are trained in running factories. So we need to go back to Taiwan to bring people to the United States to run this thing, because your schools are not training young people to run in factories. Of course, that's the case. Everyone wants service jobs, so you put on suit and tie and leave and stay in office. So that is labor. And because they can't just find those, you know what is going on? This commission day has been delayed. What happens in neighboring economy? You can't have that wealth of a nation if you do not have the capacity, you have that labor force. Because through the labor force, you have the people. And when you have the people, you have the tools, you have the processes. And when these three elements come together in fusion, you now build a very strong system that can actually deliver wealth and prosperity. And let me not go deep into what defines these great companies. And so that we don't get too academic, because of just time, I want to have time to take some questions here. But the key thing here is I'm trying to connect back to Adam Smith and connect back to Pythagoras, and now see where our positions in the society, where those positions are. Pythagoras said, the world is numbers. That means You need to have numbers as part of your strategy. And also the visible hand of Adam Smith talks about competition, the pursuit of self-interest. Having that property rights, that means I own my intellectual property, and then building the tools. These things are now very, very key. And how are they connected? They're connecting in the very data that you are using for us to have this conversation. The data. That data is nothing but numbers. The numbers of the old, that's what we call data. And we already know that if you can understand your data very well, you become better in your business. The reason why people like to use apps to go for loans in Nigeria, despite the fact that government has been fighting these loan apps, is because the loan apps, they have their own data. They use data to make decisions that could have taken a bank maybe three weeks. They can just make it in seconds. And what that means is that the closer you are towards using data, the probability that you can actually run a better business is there. And there has been so many things that made this possible. Many, many centuries ago, the best was abacus, slide rule, difference engine, union, transition of transistor in 1937, von Neumann architecture, invention of microprocessor in 1957 by Tekedia and Robert Noyce, and then the personal computing era. What is now looking at ChatGPT and AI? What is happening is that as generations of these evolutions continue, the numbers are now so evidently clear that we can generate insights from data we have, the more we can run organization. I just here, from the time that they started all those hardware systems to the time that cloud computing makes everything beautiful. And this is now here the opportunity that we have. Because across the world, we have seen great translation, great transformation. And what is driving these things? Technology. Technology is driving most of these things. The 1990s of new generation banks were powered. Technology. Banks now said that the ledger is not going to be branch located. So in other words, if you have a bank account in a branch, you don't have to just operate that account only in that branch. Rather, they can use technology through Visa to link all the branches of a bank. So that if you have a bank account in Lagos, if you travel to Kano, you can operate the same bank account in the same branch. Before then, if you are in Lagos, in the Old Union Bank and Old Face Bank, you go to Umuahia and you run out of cash, you have to come back to Lagos to the same branch to collect money because the banks were not integrated and entwined. But technology came through the new generation banks. Using Nigeria as a case study and most part of South Africa, they changed, making it possible that your branch is now agnostic because not even there today, the branch is even on your phone. That's technology. And then 10 years later, we have voice telephony, 10 years mobile internet. We are now in a new era of Cambrian moment in Africa's entrepreneurial capitalism. We're seeing that you can now use the application of mobile internet into different things, logistic, retail, e-commerce, financial services, so many ways that they are now applying the concatenation of those tools here across your capability of using mobile internet to do many things. So you're now seeing logistics companies are raising millions of dollars. Even when you look at some of the logistics companies listed in the Nigeria Stock Exchange, they also struggle. You now see startups like Kuda having valuation more than many banks in Nigeria combined. You see the largest financial institution in Nigeria, in Africa, in West Africa specifically, Flutterwave. You now see, so you see that Money Point processes $14 billion every month, $14 billion. There is no bank in Nigeria that does that level of transaction. But this is just a company that's not even up to 10 years. So what we are seeing here is a massive transformation. And that transformation is happening in agriculture. I mean, look at TrivalGrid. The kind of deals they are doing, nobody is doing. Look at this company that just raised $78 million yesterday, Move. Move is the largest financer of vehicular fleet in Africa. It's bigger than any bank you can imagine in Africa. And it doesn't have a bank license. But if you want to drive Uber, if you want to go to boats, you need cash, you need a car, you go to that company. They are using data, they are using insight, they are using new models, and they are transforming the economy. From education to real estate, there is a new pioneer. That transformation is linking the pursuit and aspiration of the wealth of a people and the technology that will make that possible. Because that is saying that when you have the technology system, that data, that number that Pythagoras was talking about becomes easier for you to make sense. And if you now have the regime, which Adam Smith postulated, the wealth comes. And that is what has happened across human history. And we are expecting a new level and a new dimension. Artificial intelligence, autonomous systems. This is the wave one we are here in innovation society. Wave two is coming. That wave two, the wealth created is not linear. The wealth created is going to be exponential. And that means the prosperity of nations is going to be defined by the capacity of what these technology stacks and technology systems do. There is a company in America called NVIDIA. At the beginning of this year, the valuation was around $356 billion. Today, that company is worth more than $1 trillion. In other words, NVIDIA has added more than 600 billion in less than 9 months. Why? Because it builds the world's best chips, integrated circuits, which are used in AI systems. Some Chinese company just placed an order of $5 billion last week, and the US government panicked and said, we want to ban this kind of export. Elon Musk bought, how many? I think $50 million worth he bought. So the richest people in the world are just asking NVIDIA, any you can make, we buy. They are trying to set up that second wave, and that is going to change. And that is going to drive the new levels of wealth. Because one thing has been consistent. Societies keep moving towards the knowledge era. 50, 100 years ago, the best companies in America were steel companies. The largest companies in America was US Steel. Bethlehem Steel was huge. 50 years later, the largest was IBM. Today is Apple, a knowledge company. If you look at it, data, knowledge, as societies mature and evolve, what happens? They move from that atom, they're still moving into byte. Nigeria, we are not there yet. In Africa, we are not there yet. The largest companies are still food, cement, infrastructure. So we're still dealing with how to eat, we're still dealing with how to build. In some of these economies, they've taken care of these things more than 100 years. But we believe that that quest, that that path, that that knowledge, that trajectory will come. And that is where we have built Tekedia Capital. Our business, which is sponsoring this program, have this conversation. We believe that that translation from here will come. So what we do here is we find great startups, great founders, and we back them. And the industry has given us awards. And it's a syndicate, essentially, bringing very small capital through members in our syndicates, some bringing $5,000, $10,000, and we collect all together and now take positions in startups. And over years, we've done very, very well. We've never had any problems. We continue to pray. Help me fast on that. We don't want to have problems. So we are also inviting you to join us at Tequila Capital Syndicate. We focus on early stage technology anchor startups. A company could be registered anywhere on earth, but we want companies that have operations in Africa because we believe vividly that the problems which have to be solved are still majorly in Africa. What are you going to do in New York City, London? We don't want to invest companies operating solely there. So the syndicate means we put resources, and anybody, companies, we have family offices, we have couple, we have young people, we have businesses, even other investment clubs. And we have that insight, that capacity to actually make those calls. So we actually have a membership. It's $1,000, 550,000 naira. It covers 4 investment cycles. We do 2 cycles every year. So that basically means 550 covers you for 2 years. And we are confident that if you partner, we can also help to build our next Africa. Our process is really simple. We're starting the next cycle in September. We post about 6 to 8 startups in the board, and startups in the board, and our members go through them, look at the ones that they are interested in, and now take positions on them. They tell us, we just give them about 2 weeks, then we have what we call the demo day. Demo day means that those startups actually come and you ask them questions. At the end of the day, we bundle that fund to do that. We funded many, many entities, so many of them is in Lagos. I think Cowrie Card, we are one of the first companies that got it when they were processing about, I think they were processing about $10,000 in a month. Today they process tens of millions of dollars. If you use the Cowrie Card BRT, that's one of the startups, so we have a couple of them. So I would like to just summarize here. It's, if you're looking at our wealth here, and that wealth today, to a large extent, that Adam Smith was hoping, and what Pythagoras was saying, technology is what brings those numbers. And when you fuse those numbers into the market system, development comes, and for the company is growth. And we have seen that that translation is supremely amazing. So thank you so much, and truly honored to have a moment with you. So please, if you have questions, I'm very happy to take them. And you just raise your hands up with the system that we have. And so you can raise your hands up if you have any question, and we're very happy to answer. Thank you so much. If you don't want to speak, you can also type. I can read your listing and respond accordingly. Okay. Do you have any question for anybody, from any person? I'm very happy to look at that. We actually have. Okay, go ahead, Adams.
Thank
go
you
ahead,
very
Adams,
much,
please.
Prof, for the. Okay, can you hear me, Prof?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much, Prof, for wonderful sharings this evening. My question, although not very directly linked to some of the things you have shared, but somehow indirectly linked. You know, some of the conversations we've been hearing recently from African leaders, people like Museveni of Uganda, Ramaphosa of South Africa, they try to push this narrative that Africa has been fully incapacitated by the Western world, that there's really any sort of serious economic investment that you can make, that we've been destabilized by the Western world. So I really needed to speak to that, because if people that are sort of our visionaries, our leaders, have this kind of thought, how does the talk? How does it impact our entrepreneurial drive and capitalism in general? So I don't know if you got my question, so thank you.
Yeah, I think I'm a very big optimist, and I still believe that the future is full of abundance. That there are many, many opportunities in the future than what we had in the past. I'm also an optimist that the best companies in Africa, the best and the best, they have not been established. So because they have not been established, what that means is the companies of the future, they have better opportunities. No one is saying that there are no problems. But if you go through human history, just like I noted about using 2,000 years of GDP, nations rise when great entrepreneurs emerge. Nations advance when great companies are in their societies. The wealth of America is not because of President Biden. The wealth of America is because of Apple, like IBM, and some of these leading companies in the world. In short, if you go to Denmark, the GDP of Denmark is smaller than Novodik, the company that does the Wegovy. That is, one company's market capitalization is bigger than the GDP of that country. So what I'm saying here is, sure, we have challenges, continents, because Africa is weak. And when you are weak, unfortunately, the world, just like, Adam Smith said it, that the pursuit of self-interest is not a bad thing. You can now bring morality into it, but you don't expect the France, you don't expect the German just to unilaterally disarm when they think they have opportunity they can capture. So, but what is necessary for you is to see how you can actually come up with a better strategy to get to the level where you need to be. Even using the community village rivalries that you have, villages compete, and they could compete for water coming from the stream. They figured out a way to see how they can come together, make sure that that water serves everyone. Africa has to figure out how to get into a position where the world will also see that, hey, we have to make sure that it works for every person, not just some. But I don't want to have this mindset that all our challenges are caused by other people. I want to have this understanding that it's not a question that Africa was colonized. It's just a question that we have not done what we have to do. At least if we have done what we are to do, we can now begin that argument whether the world has been so bad to us. So you agree with me that there are so many things that we do in Nigeria, we do in Kenya, that it wasn't caused by the foreigners. We just do these things. And because we do these things until we change, when we may not have the right results that we want. And so I want to believe that the future offers promise. And young people who continue to build, that they will continue to help us get to that destination. And if they do, you may be surprised that our trajectory will actually begin to change. I'm a very good optimist on that. So let's go to Kunle, please. Go ahead, Kunle.
Yeah, good evening, Prof. And thank you for sharing with us. It's always a pleasure listening to you. I want to know, how does Tekedia works? How does it capture value in all of these startups and all of that? And how can we also come in as individuals as well? That's my question. Thank you.
Okay, so Tekedia, as I noted, is a syndicate. What that means is you have to be a member to participate in a business. So we bring in startups that we know them, we work with them, and they come in. Then if you have money, you can invest in them. But to do that and to have the opportunity, you have to register. Our fee is $1,000 or 550,000 naira. It covers you largely for 2 years of investment opportunity. So, but if you do not have that ability to register as an individual, you could get your friends. Maybe you can get even 10 friends, and each of you contribute 55,000 among yourself. But we will not sign contract with any person. We will ask you guys to go to Corporate Affairs Commission or your state's business registration bureau to register the name of a company. So when you now register the name of that company, it is that company that represents you guys that will sign. Unless you are husband and wife, that is when we can allow a couple to be on the same contract, because these are generational investments. And because they are generational investments, we don't want a scenario where 10 friends come together, they represented by one person, then in the next 5 years, the son or the daughter will say, it was my father's, this thing, other people were annoyed. So we don't allow that. So rather we ask them, go and form a company and come. And you can be 10, you can be 20. In short, a week ago, I was speaking with guys in Japan, a lot of Nigerians in diaspora, they are coming together, told them, we even recommended a lawyer, they can go and register the company through the United States if they prefer, or go to Nigeria. So by doing that, that entity becomes an umbrella that governs all of you. And then you can now come to Tekedia. And so that makes managing that fee easy. We don't want to reduce the fee because we actually, to a large extent, discourage people from joining. And we don't want people to use money for diapers, for Indomie noodles, to start investing in the next pay stack, Flutterwave, pass, maintain. No. If the money is for diapers, make sure the diaper is taken care of. If the money for Indomie noodles, make sure that Indomie noodles. So as you grow in your career or you have more means, you can come. But we don't want to create the impression that, hey, I just want to save these 50,000 so that I go and invest in the next stack. No. So that's why we made the barrier of entry very high. And that barrier of entry, making it very high, a lot of people are not happy. But we said, okay, to reduce your risk, go and find friends so that you guys can come together. Then there is a question on the board on I will need more clarification on the 1K USD. I think I've just explained the $1,000 or 550,000 if you're in Nigeria is a membership fee. It covers 4 cycles. We do 2 cycles in a year. And the 20% there is what we call the carried interest. The carried interest is really our business. What that means is if you invest $10,000 today, or equivalent in Naira, and then the company the company exit means that the company is bought or the company is acquired or in one way or the other. And that's 10,000 now turns out to be 100,000. You take out that 10,000 from that 100,000. The 90,000 that remains, Tekedia will keep 20% of it, while the 80% goes to you. So that's what we call the 20% carry. That is actually our business. So if you put 10,000 and the money that 10,000 has generated is 100,000, you subtract that 10,000 from that 90,000, we take 20%. That 20% is what we call the carry. Yeah. And okay, and so that takes care of that. So let me also, this is okay, great, thank you. Please, how can I get a copy of your presentation? Okay, we'll post this thing. Actually, it's been live stream on YouTube. It's been okay. Let's go to Adedayo, please. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Prof. I just want to ask as regards the return on investment. For instance, if I put in say $5,000 to start, and then what's the return on investment like? Like say I've put in $5,000, and maybe is there any form of like return on investment on a frequent basis, or it's just about appreciation of one's investments? So I want to understand the aspect of return on investment.
Yeah. Okay. So this is not a company where you are going to get a lot of dividend. Investing in startups, the wealth is not on dividend. Dividend is that construct where companies make profits and that profit is now shared, and so that everyone can go home at least once in a year with some money. No, these startups most times they don't make profit. They don't generate profit, so there is no dividend. So if you invest, the likelihood that you are going to get dividend is very, very low. But however, what you are really investing here is appreciation of that value. So you put in 10,000 and that 10,000 can turn out to be $100,000. Just like when Kuda came, I think I've written about that, they needed 100,000 from us. And we asked them, how do you, they came to me that time, they stopped everything they were doing. I traveled from US to Lagos with Professor Salami to run a program for bank CEOs in Tekedia. I think Radisson Blue there was a lot of bank CEO that came. So they asked me there to come and do something there. So the Kuda guys waited for me, two of them, Musio and CEO. They needed $100,000. I actually had the money. But to be honest with you, I didn't understand how they were going to make money because they told me that their bank was a bank for the free. But you just understand this guy who grew up in the village. How do you run a bank where everything is free? So to be honest with you, I was just skeptical. I'm not going to give you money to go and run a bank where everything is free. But it was my call. If I had put down $100,000, that money would have returned not less than $7.5 million. Because within 18 months, they move their valuation to $500 million. Even if I have an early stage investors exited. So they just said, okay, let's say you put 100,000, that would have brought close to $7 million. So that is really what you invested, and not whether you'll be getting $300 in profit sharing or whether you'll be getting $200. No, you are investing for massive acceleration of that capital that you are putting in. So that's the way it works. Nobody is going to be giving you dividends every year because that's not the business model. Yeah, it doesn't mean that it cannot happen, but it's not it doesn't happen. Yeah, there's just nothing. Yeah, it doesn't happen. But of course, if a company goes IPO, of course, you can get dividend, but don't invest thinking that we're going to be cutting check for you at the end of every year. No, rather invest knowing that this investment will appreciate in value. And we are not talking about 10%, 20%, 30%. No, we are talking about multiples. Like the money we put in our past when we got in first time, I mean, could have returned more than 50x. Yeah, I mean, I can retire in the village now. And just knowing that they will take care of my Bonvita, my milk. Okay, let's go to Yemisi, please. Go ahead. Yemisi.
Okay, good day, Prof. I have two questions. You were explaining when somebody asked about like the probably return, the 20% you have in your clause, the 20% carry, yes. You were explaining that, for instance, if I invest $10,000 and it's appreciated to about 100,000. You said apart from the 10,000, the 90,000 is what you get the 20%. My question is, what happens to the 10,000, the real initial capital?
So we'll give it back to you. So you first of all take that 10,000, it's your money before we start sharing anything that comes out. That's just your money.
Okay. Okay,
yeah.
So and then we'll talk about the profit. No, now my next question is, at what point, you were talking about nobody's going to be paying you like dividends and all of that. So at what point, like what's the duration of investing in this startup that you could talk about this example of the sharing you talked about?
Yeah, there is no time frame. But we ask you to have a mindset that it's around 3 to 7 years. But it could also happen within 3 months. It can also happen within 4 years. But we don't try to give the impression that you can just get into the next week when I get out. It's not a stock market where you have a public liquidity. So what happens is it's not very liquid because it's only when the startup is raising money, that's when you have a chance of getting out. So duration, we say, look at 3 to 7 years. That's when you should be expecting.
My last question, sorry, it's a 2-in-1. Now, is it possible, like the example you gave, where there's a profit and the person is being paid after you've taken the 20% carry? Is there going to be a possibility of reinvesting?
Yeah, you could invest your money if you want. Yeah, a lot of our members do that. Instead of you decide what you want to do that, but we have to capture that it is your money. So that cycle has been completely concluded. So we had an exit in a startup this year. All the members decided to reinvest that money, but that reinvestment has to require you knowing that this is your money. You are just deciding to invest it. So we still go through the whole process.
Okay, so the last one I meant by 2-in-1 is, so if I invest $10,000, for instance, you, if I'm correct, let me know if I'm wrong. You are the one that determines the startups you want to give these funds to. It has nothing to do with me or saying you must put it with A or B. Is that correct?
No. We bring in about typically between 6 to 8 companies, startups. And these are not startups we pick on the streets. We know them, we work with them, we spend time. In short, the ones that are coming, we know them, we set milestone what you need. The one that even coming next year, so the largest thing, we started already working with some of them. So if they meet the milestones we want, they make it. If they don't, unfortunately, they can't come. So out of those 8, you could decide to invest in 1, or you decide to invest in 2, or even you decide not to invest in any. So we are just saying we have 8 that are available in this cycle. You are the one that will determine or decide on the one you want to invest in. Of course, if you want us to help you just to share our perspectives, we do. But during the investment process, we have what we call our overview video. In that video, we make a video to analyze each of these startups. We explain why we like them. We also explain where we think there could be an issue and things like that. And so you watch those videos, but you now have to make a call on the specific one that you want to consider.
And location is not a limitation. So
No.
for probably some of us in the diaspora.
No. We have people, I think, more than 30-something countries, even in Saudi Arabia. And we have people in Saudi, everywhere. So, but it has to be a place where US government allows business. So we don't accept people from Sudan. We don't accept people from Iran. Of course, we don't even have people there. So where you are is irrelevant. We have people everywhere in the country, in the world.
Okay. I'm sorry, my husband is here and he has a question. Sorry to say it's the last one again.
No, it's okay. Please.
Okay, so when we were talking about duration, that it could be 3 years, it could be 4 years or 7 years. Now, at what point do we, whatever the years, it's not the issue, but at what point do we know that, oh, this is profit sharing time or this is payback time? What determines that?
Yeah, so in every startup that we get in, that is what we call terminal value computation. We do a lot of mathematics here. And that mathematics, most times the startups may not even know. We look at your startup, said, okay, this startup, the maximum valuation it can reach under the circumstances we have in that market is $50 million. So if this startup is worth maybe 30 million, we're not interested. But if this startup is worth $500,000 or $750,000, we're interested. Then what we'll do, you did that with an insurance startup, insurtech startup this year. When that startup got to very close to where we felt the marginal terminal value is, we told our members, say, gentlemen and ladies, let's go and have a meeting, let's vote. Tekedia Capital will try to explain our justification that this is the time to get out. Because the ability to move from here and double may take very, very long time. So it doesn't make sense. Rather, let's get out and move in. You can take your money and put it in another company that can actually grow faster. So that terminal value computation helps us to stay in check so that we don't expect a company to grow 50% when the industry is growing 1%. So that that computation is not really driven by number of years. It's just driven by how fast that startup has been able to grow. And we are very, very meticulous on that. We say, hey, they have tried, they got here very fast. We don't think they have rooms to grow more. And then we begin to look at how we can get out. And before we know it, we just exit.
Okay, and you think these funds are insured, right?
Insured, they are not insured. You can actually lose all the money. So what we try to do is to make sure we do the best we can So nothing insurance here. Yeah,
Okay.
but we've never had any problem, and we've never had any problem because we don't gamble with the experts. These are very
Okay.
risky. These are very risky investments, but they're also very, very rewarding investments. There's just no way to say it. They're very risky. Unlike your stock market, if you buy GT Bank or GT Co, you can just go and sleep. This month's my
It's
sister, I'm
Ivy.
gonna pretend.
No, I like the fact that you're just being truthful and as plain as it should be.
Yeah.
That's good.
And that's why we made the barrier of entry very high. You know, the barrier of
Okay.
entry is very high, asking people to pay $1,000, $550, because we believe if you can afford 550,000 in Nigeria, you're a rich person. Even if the startup fails, you are not going to deny that baby her diaper or the kids their Indomie noodles, because you can afford 50 means your family is stable. So, but if you now say if you have 10,000 to invest, you can cause trouble in families because that 10,000 may be the only thing they have to buy food for them. So that's why a barrier of entry is very high. Okay, let's go to OG,
Okay.
please. Go ahead, OG.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, OG, please go ahead. Okay, if OG is not there, let's go to Clinton. I hope I'm audible, right?
Hello, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, we can hear you now. Go ahead, Clinton.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I want to say thank you first for the very insightful presentation earlier. So I have I would say 2 questions along those tangents. So the first thing I wanted to ask, or I want to ask, is maybe what you consider a sequel to something somebody asked earlier about the issue we are facing as countries. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. I think we'll mute that person. Go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay, the issue we are facing as African countries. Now, by what you explained, right, you were talking about how that the GDP of many African countries are still presumably very flat, since our populations are increasing, but there really isn't much happening, right, on the GDP. So that means people are poorer. So the question I have is this: does this in any way have anything to do with the fact that there might just be what you would regard as maybe an artificial manipulation of currencies?
No, I do not believe on artificial manipulation of currency, because I didn't do economics in secondary school as WAEC, but I studied economics in my SS1. I wrote it in SS1 in WAEC in external GCE. And if you read, I read A.O. Lawal. A.O. Lawal, I picked it up, read it, went and wrote that GCE in secondary school. It was clear. Currency is nothing but the same thing you have in demand and supply. I take, for instance, for the Nigerian one, because a lot of people are saying that the Western world is trying to destabilize Nigeria by manipulating our currency and things. I don't believe it. Personally, without going political, I believe that you need to have parity in demand and supply for you to attain an equilibrium point that is stable. That's A.O. Lawal's economics textbook. So if you are generating $100 and you need $1,100, you're going to have trouble in maintaining parity. Today in Nigeria, more people are looking for dollars than Nigeria can, let me use the word, create or produce dollar. And if that is the case, there is no way in this world that dollar will not be losing value, because it's fundamental economics. So if you float it or swim it, and you cannot create that parity, either you reduce demand or you produce more of that dollar, the currency will continue. That's why we have 930 and things like that. So nobody's manipulating anything. What is happening here is free market in a real sense of it. Nobody is coming from US or France to cause this trouble. This is just simple, basic AO Lawas textbook. But
Okay.
if for any reason you are no more needing dollar because you have a refinery that produces your fuel, that dollar will now be in surplus more than required. You know what happens? Currency will start dropping. That was what was happening in China. I'm sure China's problem today is even how to make their currency to fall. You see, that's anytime their currency is falling, that's when they start complaining that China is manipulating the market, because China can allow its currency to even strengthen because it has so much dollar than it needs, because it's an import, it's a net exporter.
Yeah.
So because of that, just look at the accusation every quarter. US government will say that China is not allowing its currency to actually do it because it's trying to manipulate markets so that these goods and services will be cheaper. That's the opposite of Nigerian case. So I don't think anybody is manipulating it. This is just basic economics, and that is why. Yeah, go ahead. That's what I would just say from my limited knowledge.
Okay, sir. But if you take it a little bit, you understand very well that the US dollar, right, is not exactly money, it's fiat. And that means it's not backed by, it's just, some people would say that it's really not backed by maybe gold or anything that you can call tangibility. So it's just backed by quote unquote propaganda, really, because there is nothing that is backing it, and they can actually print it at will, right? And many of the countries in the nations of the world, right, are actually somehow dependent on what is going on there.
What are you doing about Pastor Joel's message?
Okay,
Huh?
sorry, I think, okay, go ahead, sorry. Okay, I think, Clinton, let me say that, not to cut you just because of time. The US government doesn't need to back anything because US government has printers. That is the reason why US debt is not a big problem, because the debt is in their currency. I will take you back to one of the finest books in the Igbo world. It's called Wadiegu. I read it, it's an Igbo novel. That Wadiegu, I mean, it was not really a nice book like Tony Besier's Isiako. This is just one of those Igbo novels you read in secondary school. He said that when you're taking a loan, go to your kinsman. Because if that loan goes bad, your kinsman can lock you up, take you to the police. But that day, what happens to your wife and your children, your kinsman will be responsible. There is wisdom there. Debt is good when it's home. The closer your debt is to your home, to your house, to your family, the better you have a leverage. So what the man was saying was, if you take that loan from a stranger, he will lock you up and he will not know that your family has to be taken care of. America takes loan in their own currency. They take the loan in their home. So they don't have to earn dollar. They just have to buy more printers to print it. And provided they are printing it to compensate for anything, it doesn't cause massive dislocation to them. But in Nigeria, you have to earn that dollar because you don't have that special printer. And because you have to earn that dollar, you rewire your economic framework. What do I mean by rewire economic framework? Instead of producing vegetable that your family needs, you have to be looking at cash crop that can be exported. But if you look at producing cash crop, it doesn't really add a lot of value to you as a family, as a village, because of one thing. I mean, how many of us use rubber? You need to bother yourself farming rubber. But we need vegetables, orange, our yam, cassava. But because those things are not easily exportable, the government doesn't really pay a lot of attention to those because they need to earn dollar so that they can pay their debt. So by owing that money in US dollar, your agriculture policy as a country in Sub-Saharan Africa is distorted because you have to pay in a currency you cannot print. It's not necessarily America's problem because they did not force you to have that contract in US dollar. It is their economic positioning. And just look at this plot here, this graph here. In 1786, when the U.S. economy overtook economy of Great Britain as the largest economy in the world.
Yes,
and this was the birth of America, 1776. Samuel Hopkins here at 1780 got his first patent. So this was where that inflation point happened. It didn't just happen by fear. They worked for it. And when they worked for it, they used the dominance of their currency to keep a competitive advantage. And it's going to be very difficult for you to just ask them to dislodge the competitive position they work themselves into. As just less than 200 years ago, China has a bigger economy than US. In the last 10 centuries, China has maintained the largest GDP, at least 6 of them, the last 10 centuries. And that is the reason why many people believe that China has always been the largest economy, that in the next 2 decades, China will be larger than the US economy. So I would say here, just time, that this is not really a question of manipulation. This is a question of nobody wants to willingly disarm his or her competitive advantage. And I don't expect America to come tomorrow to say, I'm not going to relinquish my position. No way. If you want it, go and get it. That's how.
Please, just one final.
Okay,
one,
go
please.
ahead, please.
Okay, so that kind of underscores why we are having a lot of bias, right, in many startups, because you find startups trying to start, but to some degree they now try to pivot into fintech companies. In fact, most of the companies that you actually showed when you were presenting a lot of them were fintech companies, because it seems like where the money really is and where investors want to put their money into is like still in the business of currencies or in the business of money, if you understand that question, sir.
So it is not necessarily that. What really happens here is the biggest friction in Africa today is exchange of value. And until you can solve the problem of exchange of value, you cannot advance logistics, you cannot advance agriculture, you cannot advance everything. The intra-African trade among Africans, among African countries, is so small. And because it's so small, there is just no value for a startup to start today and be saying, I want to sell to Gambians, I want to sell to people in Ethiopia. So what investors are saying that the first layer of any economic integration is payment. So this is the first wave. Once this, I think they are nearly solving that problem. Now, if you look at the speeches from the leading startup founders, I also have what I call fintechnalization. You don't become a good fintech company now by offering payment. Payment problem is fading. You need to also give customers more than just helping them to collect money if you want to have a competitive advantage. That means you have to help them make money even as you're helping them to keep that money. So what I'm saying here, you're moving to the second level because that payment is interoperable. The second level, how do you use that interoperability to now make it possible for agriculture to happen? So I want to invest in somebody doing farming in Ethiopia. Can ease of paying and transferring money from Nigeria to Ethiopia make it possible for me to give that farmer money? Today is still tough. And unless you solve that problem, that farmer in Ethiopia cannot get ahead. So this is level 1. We're moving into level 2. And that level 2, you now see other companies. And I think it's already happening.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. I'm grateful.
Okay, great. Welcome. So is Oji there? Are you still there, please? Okay, go ahead, please. I think we'll do that, then we'll round up. Go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity. So my question was this. I think maybe you lost me through the presentation because I thought the goal of the presentation was for startups to get funding, right? So I was paying attention, trying to hear how or what are the requirements for those startups for them to get into to get these fundings. But somewhere along the line, maybe I wasn't clear about it, but are these startups expected to also make payments in order for them to be qualified for these funds, but the whole process, what kind of portfolio are they expected to submit, and all those details, I was probably lost if that's not the goal of this.
Okay, no. Actually, if you just go to our website at capital.tekedia.com, you see what we fund, what startups have to do. Just go to capital.tekedia.com, and the process is really simple. Just send your pitch deck to our website, to our email. Yeah. There is absolutely no fee. Tekedia does not charge any startup any fee. In short, it's actually a privilege for us to be given the opportunity to invest in you, because one of the things we realize is that the best startups most times difficult. There is a company in Guinea, one of the startups that's coming in this September. This guy, they started this company in 6 months. He has processed $107 million. We said, okay, can we get as many space? Say no, because everyone wants a piece of this company. So most of our members that are here will realize that the last one we did, it was a battle. We had a startup, it gave us space. It was oversubscribed by a factor of 10. So when we have great startups that give us opportunity to even invest with time. So if you have something, submit it to our team and they will evaluate it. And if something that we think we can work together, sure, we will be very, very happy to work with you. But we don't charge a fee and we don't also take any fee. And we don't, that's what they call a success fee. We don't do success fee. And our interest is aligned with our investors. So if we don't do well to get that carry of 30%, everyone goes empty-handed. So just do that and go to our website instead.
Okay, thank you for that. And another question.
Okay, go ahead. Just
what's the non-disclosure? When they submit their deck, is there like a non-disclosure between your team and the startups?
Yeah. So the best thing we do is just submit your website. I think you go through the process, submit your website. If it's something that we're interested in, we look at it. But if it's something that we're not interested, we'll just tell you we're not interested in it. So we look at a website and we think it has value in our hypothesis and our interest based on the signals we get from our members, because they are really the main investors here. We know what they like. We know the startups that we bring. The problem is now how to tell a man, a woman that she wants to invest $50,000, you tell her you can only take 5,000. So I think, was it the last one we did? We had about 3 companies that we had to do that, and many were not happy. But we are happy, actually, when you are able to let it be that there's so much money that a startup can take, unlike you bring it and nobody feels that you've done anything. So if we like, we will now ask you to send that pitch deck. Technically, there is nothing like non-disclosure. And there's nothing like signing NDA. We don't sign NDA. And because it's just no way. We will fund you and also fund your competitor. So if you have a business that does fintech and another company that does the same thing maybe in 2 years, it makes sense because our members are on rolling basis. We cannot say because we funded Touch and Pay 2-3 years ago that another company that does what it does, that we cannot fund it. Otherwise, we won't have a business because the people that invested in Touch and Pay are no more the same people that we have today. So we fund just like Y Combinator, Techstacks. They can fund anything. We don't do that. But we're not going to take your intellectual property and give another startup. Nothing like that. If we don't like what you're doing, we delete it in our system. So, but it doesn't mean that we cannot fund in that space. I think that is very clear. Just trying to make sure that we don't.
That's clear. Thank you.
Okay. If you can throw. Okay, I think I've just answered that. Just reading the questions. What is done in case of? Okay, we have a question here. What if you have a loss? Interestingly, we've never had any case where we have a loss or have a first startup, but we have a mechanism of making sure that if there is any issue, we like to invest in companies that have intellectual property. And we like companies that have IPs. So typically, if there should be any issue of a startup going down, we will discuss with the team that during that process of liquidation, that we have access to that IP. Likelihood that the value of that IP is more than the money that we've invested. It's always high, it's there. And we can now sell that IP to recover our money with our members. But this is a position we don't want to go into, but we have mechanisms that we can use. That's why we like tech-anchored companies. And there is a reason for that, because the IP in those companies, many cases, they become collateral for that money that we're giving. And that's why we don't invest in e-commerce, because the power of e-commerce is not in the tech, it's actually in your logistics. And so there's so many decisions we make, we cannot just explain all of them here. So that's what will happen if there is a company has to fail. We will ask for the IP and use it to recover that money. And so let me see for how to, okay, yes, you can connect to Namje Itayo, they just put a contact here. Okay, Itayo's also there. So on return on investment, we talk of multiples. We have companies that have returned on paper more than 10x, and we exited one just within roughly 9 months. One this thing at 5x, not a lot of money. You put money, let's say you put 10,000, you got 50,000. There were some reasons why we decided to exit that business. But we have many great companies that have done very, very well on paper. So I think, gentlemen and ladies, just because we're already over 2 minutes, I want to thank you so much for joining us at Tekedia Open. And please, if you do have any question, we have an email. Also, take contact of our team members, Itayo and I, and we're very, very happy. We welcome you and to our community. It's the largest syndicate, I would say, in here, because we have close to 300 people, and we continue to grow. So thank you so much, and stay blessed. We want to hope we can have partnership with you. Bye-bye. Thank you. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Prof. Good job.
Thank you so much, Prof. Is there a way we can reach you on phone?
Yeah, just send an email to our team if you want to connect. Just send an email to capital at, or you also can also reach Namde or they will connect you to.
Okay, capital at what?
Capital at tekedia.com. Capital at tekedia. Yeah, this is the email, capital at tekedia.com. You could send an email there.
Okay, because I'm trying to reach you from the US. Okay, because I want to know how.
Okay, if you, I don't know if you type your this thing here, I can call you. That's okay.
Okay.
If you type it, send me a chat on. You can send a chat. What do they call it? Private chat on Zoom here. Just send me a private chat. We can speak now. I think I have about 20 minutes here before going to another presentation. Yeah. So send me a chat. Yeah, I am. I think Tekedia Cup here. Hello.
Do you have charger?
Okay, Gabriel, are you the one that said you want to reach out to me? Gabriel? Yes. So the person could send a private chat on, yeah, because we are shutting this thing down, or you just email capital at Tekedia. You can our team members are also here. And so, okay, thank you so much, gentlemen. And I think we're shutting this down. I want you to go back to your families, please. It's ended. We thank you so much for the moment and the privilege of spending the time together with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Prof. Well, thank you, Prof. Good evening,
All right,
everyone.
thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Prof. Akin Salami signing off.
Okay, thank you.